let's take you and recap and say that the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Mmamoloko Kubayi, and the NDPP, National Director of Public Prosecutions, Advocate Andrea Mothibi, briefing the media on leadership changes at the investigating Directorate Against Corruption, known as IDAC. The briefing follows the resignation of IDAC head Advocate Andrea Johnson, and it aims to provide clarity on key developments to ensure continuity and stability within the ID. So joining us then to take that conversation forward is the Director of Accountability Now, Advocate Paul Hoffman, who joins this conversation. Of course, we are also joined by Azania Mnisi, also part of the conversation. Let me just start with a reflection before we get into the systems conversation, whether or not the institution that is IDAC survives this and whether or not it is adequate for the purposes of responding to the constitutional injunction to establish an independent institution against corruption. But I'd like to hear your broad reflections on everything we've heard this afternoon, starting with you, Advocate Hoffman. Everything you've heard today about the investigators, chief investigator, senior investigator being placed under suspension and disciplinary processes to follow. Andrea Johnson is, we get confirmation now that that criminal investigation is well and truly underway and the cases are being reviewed.
Yes, thanks, Tulasizwe. I think where we need to start is not on the operations, which have certainly gone awry under the leadership of Andrea Johnson. We need to look at the structure, because if the structure is not right, you can stand on your head and whistle Dixie and you still won't get it right. Mm-hmm. What is wrong at the moment is that the Glenister judgment to which you referred in your intro, in fact, both of the judgments, the 2011 one and the 2014 one, have just not been taken on board by the legislature and by the executive branch of government. The take-home message from the 2011 case is that our law demands a body outside executive control to deal effectively with corruption. I'm afraid IDAC is not such a body. And even if you water that down on an interpretation of the 2014 Glenister case, you still need to have an adequately independent body to deal with corruption. And the court was very strong on corruption being rife in South Africa and that we really do need to do something about it. In fact, former Chief Justice Zondo said we won't have a country worthy of the name if we don't take urgent and drastic steps.
All right.
Now, it's not an urgent and drastic step to tweak IDAC to try and make it work better. What needs to happen now is for government to take that word accountability that occurred about 5,000 times in the last hour in the press conference that we've all just emerged from, and take it seriously and behave accountably.
All right.
And create a body that is outside executive control.
I will come back. I will come back to that point in a moment, Advocate Hoffman. But I do need to bring in Mr. Azania Mnisi for his first take on this. Just your first take, Azania, from everything that we have heard. Advocate Hoffman talks about this being a tweaking exercise, some of what we have seen today, and saying that it will be inadequate. But your own perspective, some of the steps that are being taken, as I've recapped them, and I won't do it again, everything that's come through from the briefing, what does it symbolize for you, for the institution that is IDAC?
Thank you, Tulasizwe, and good evening to the viewers. We are seeing the chickens coming home to roost. I think the generation of Polokwane in 2007, of the ANC that got power, they should be hanging their heads in shame at this point in time, because we are in this crisis because of them and what they've pushed for when they disbanded the effective body called Scorpion, which was there, which was later watered down to what we are having today. And I want to agree with Advocate Hoffman to say that we don't see IDAC as a best instrument for that matter to fight this crime that it is established for. We had something that was working, that was effective, but because politicians, they thrive more on corruption and they don't want effective structures to be there to be able to hold them accountable. And then we had Scorpion disbanded. Why fix something that is not broken and find ourselves here? So IDAC is a trial and error, and I agree also with the minister. We cannot disband IDAC, but let's make it more effective. Let us go back to the first concept that was there of the Scorpion. Give them those powers, but obviously remove the cameras, because I mean that was one other criticism of Scorpion of cameras. But you need a Scorpion back.
Yeah, interesting you should use that term, Azania, because when the investigating directorate was first announced, I recall Advocate Hoffman, a few people talking about, are we looking at a Scorpions 2.0? Let me come back to you, Advocate Hoffman. You are strongly critical, and I think your words from 2024 were referenced in the questions there being posed by journalists, that you foresaw this, that the IDAC would not be successful in terms of fulfilling their requirements. I believe it's called STIRS, the STIRS 5 requirements that came through from that judgment, that you foresaw that it would not meet those. Talk to those STIRS requirements and why IDAC, in your view, has failed to live up to those.
Yes, this body outside executive control, which the Constitutional Court has ordered Parliament to create, has as its 5 main characteristics for that body outside executive control: specialization, training in anti-corruption work, independence, both in structure and in operations, not just in operations, the resources that are guaranteed and are adequate to enable the body to do its work, and most important of all, secure tenure of office for the people working in that body.
That's why we get that STIRS acronym, yeah. So sorry, I just jumped into, just for context for the viewers, that's where the STIRS acronym comes from those elements you just outlined. Do continue.
Yes. Right. Now, what we have with IDAC is not the single body which the court in both of the Glenister cases requires, but we have it as an agency within the National Prosecuting Authority. And we all know, just by reading the Constitution, that the National Prosecuting Authority is not an independent body. Why? Because the minister has final responsibility over everybody in the National Prosecuting Authority, including IDAC. Her Director General of Justice is the accounting officer of the National Prosecuting Authority and accordingly of IDAC, and it means that the purse strings of the organization are not controlled by the organization itself. Then you have the difficulty that prosecution policy is subject to the concurrence of the Minister of Justice. So effectively, the Minister of Justice has a veto over prosecution policy. And those features were drawn to the attention of the President before he signed IDAC into law, and he ignored our entreaties that he rather create a body that is outside executive control, which is really the critical element of the problem.
So it's that ongoing conversation, Advocate Hoffman, and as I turn to you, Azania, about the independence of the NPA, in particular, the position of NDPP versus the ultimate accounting officer at the moment, the NPA being a program within the Department of Justice versus, some are saying full independence or sufficient independence, which would mean that the NDPP would then become the accounting officer. Azania, so we're talking systemic issues here. Why is the problem not fixable by simply saying Andrea Johnson was a bad appointment, the NDPP to whom she was accountable was not a great appointment herself, and perhaps we just need to appoint a proper NDPP, proper investigating director, make sure that we appoint a proper chief investigating investigator within IDAC, senior investigator, and specialized investigators, and Bob's your uncle, and we are home and dry.
When you start anything, if the foundation is wrong, be rest assured the whole product is going to be wrong. So the reality here is that they need to trace back their actions, go back to what we lost in the form of Scorpion and rebuild that because it was effective, and make sure that they secure the independence of IDAC, but give it more power because as the advocate is saying, it will not be independent if it's beholden by the Minister of Justice and also with the Director General in the mix as an accounting officer there. So it is easy to do what has to be done in order to rebuild the IDAC. You can continue with the name IDAC because Scorpion maybe it might be sending shivers to the comrades. So what should then happen is that let there be a move to make sure that IDAC is independent, and there are a lot of people. We cannot throw the child with the basin, obviously, because Advocate Andrea Johnson decided to be compromising the position. There are people capable that can be able to lead this organization with integrity, and there are people who are trained who can be able to guide. What will help our leaders is an ability to listen and take counsel, because as you have heard, the president was advised of the ineffectiveness that will be there within IDAC, but the advice was not taken into cognizance. So it will be very much important to go back and listen to what the experts are saying.
Parting shots from the both of you. Let me start with you, Azania, and very briefly, if you don't mind. So I take from what you are saying that you don't follow the school of thought that says, what is this IDAC? Let's just get rid of it, take whatever powers to other agencies such that they are able to investigate corruption. It can be salvaged. You don't follow that school of thought, do you?
Obviously, no, I don't. I believe that something good can come out of IDAC, fix the mechanics, make it independent, and allow it to operate. Retrace your steps and go back and ask yourself, what was Scorpion? What was it doing? And was it effective? If it was effective, let it come back. It was effective. And that's why the complex decided to disband it.
Yeah. And Advocate Hoffman, let me end it with you on the question of independence. Sufficient independence or full independence, and what does it look like? I think I heard the minister again slamming the door shut on this idea of the independent, corruption investigating agency outside of the executive and the control of the state, of the executive being a Chapter 9 institution. It doesn't seem there's appetite for that. Is that what you are, for lack of a better word, pining for?
I'm pining a lot. I'm pining for it all the way because, in fact, the minister must remember that in 2020, the NEC of the ANC passed a resolution calling on Cabinet to urgently create a body that was independent and effective at dealing with corruption. And the characteristics, the STIRS criteria, specialized, trained, independent, resourced properly, and secure in tenure of office were all of the elements of what the NEC was asking for. And that request from the NEC, that resolution, was ignored. And there is no political appetite in the upper reaches of the executive branch of government to go with the idea of a Chapter 9 institution, which is going to cost them a lot at the polls, not only this year, but in 2 years' time. Because people in South Africa are sick and tired of living with corruption as a given in our society. And that means that the political will to create a Chapter 9 institution of the kind that is being punted by the chief whip of the DA, happens to be part of the GNU, if you don't mind, with her anti-corruption commission bill. And that's not a commission of inquiry. It's a permanent standing commission like the Human Rights Commission and the Auditor General.
I have to leave it there. Yeah, thank you for your time this afternoon and for your insights. It's really been an insightful conversation with the both of you. Advocate Paul Hoffman, as well as Azania Mnisi, independent security expert, weighing in on issues coming through around IDAC, everything that we've heard this afternoon.